So Perez versus Nicolau fight night just got over. It was a pretty decent card, not the best card, but for a free fight night, can't really complain too much, especially with how stacked 299 and 300 were. We had a couple sick knockouts, a couple very entertaining fights, even though they weren't knockouts. Starting off the prelims, we have Benitez versus Machete. Very fun, very sloppy fight. Both guys were landing hard shots. And overall got the split decision win for Machete. Excited to see where this guy can go. Probably won't go too far, but he will be fun to watch. He's willing to take one to give one, and he does seem to have quite a bit of power. Benitez is not an easy guy to finish at all, especially on the feet. The guy has a great chin for his age. So yeah, pretty good win from Machete. And next up we have Petrovic versus Liang Na. Not the best fight, pretty boring, but Petrovic dominated. She got the sub in the third. Nothing to really write home about. I pretty much skipped that one. We have Lontop versus Padilla. Padilla got a rear naked choke in the first round. Great performance. Everybody was writing off Padilla. Not sure why, but very solid performance. If he can keep this up, he could definitely be a problem. Maybe break into the top 15, but that's a lot to ask. Next up, we have Mann versus Souza. Souza had very good striking. Mann was very tough. But one thing I will say about Mann, she definitely got bullied because of her last name. Hence why she's a fighter now. This was also a boring fight, unfortunately, but Souza ended up getting the unanimous decision. Not a whole lot to say about this fight either, unfortunately. And we have Machado versus Don'Tale Mayes. They were throwing bombs in the first round. Very fun scrap. Don'Tale Mayes looked pretty good, especially considering he's a very 50-50 fighter. But I was pretty impressed with his performance. It looked like he was on his way out of the UFC, but he seems to have pulled it together and got a pretty good win over a pretty tough opponent. Both guys did do great in this fight, and yeah, I'm excited to see where both of them end up. Next up, we have Austin Hubbard versus Figlak, not positive how to pronounce his last name. It was also a great scrap, very fun to watch. Austin Hubbard did win the unanimous decision. Both guys were slugging it out. There were a couple instances where Austin Hubbard looked like he was going to have some issues, but he pulled it together. Looked very solid. Not really the most patient fighter, but very solid win, and Figlak could definitely give a lot of guys in the division a lot of problems. Again, probably won't break into the top 15, top 10, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he gets an upset and moves forward and learns from this loss. Next up, we have Ronnie Yaya versus Victor Henry. Ronnie Yaya had a extremely bizarre haircut, very weird. He has a receding hairline, plus he shaved all the sides to his head, so I really don't know what's going on there, but they have very solid performance from Victor Henry. Ronnie Yaya is extremely tough, and Henry dropped Yaya bad multiple times in this fight. But one thing you gotta give Ronnie Yaya is he is tough as nails, and he's there to fight, that's for sure. I thought that Ronnie Yaya was gonna get Victor Henry out of there in this fight, but I was very much surprised by Victor. He ended up winning by decision. Next up, we have a nasty knockout from Uros Medic versus Tim Means. Medic hit him with a very solid uppercut, perfect timing. A lot of power, perfect accuracy as well. It was just phenomenal. If you didn't watch this fight, I highly recommend watching at least the knockout. But Tim Means, he might have to retire after this. He looked very out of shape. He had kind of a gut going on, which isn't great, especially at his age. So he could have just looked sloppy because of how old he is, but it's also a sign that you might want to retire sooner rather than later. They had very solid knockout, very short fight, but very fun fight as well because of the knockout. Next up, we have Jonathan Pierce versus David Onama. This was a very fun scrap, probably fight of the night. If not, it's a fight later on in this card. But yeah, David Onama missed weight, so I think that did give him the edge in this fight. But David Onama looked like he was on point tonight. He was landing very good shots, very fun scrambles. Every time Jonathan Pierce would get Onama on his back, Onama would be struggling and eventually get the reversal and really give Jonathan Pierce a run for his money on the ground, which is surprising. And yeah, David Onama, it looked like he was starting to get gassed out at the end of the second round, but at the third round he was still on point, so I don't think he was tired. I think he was just trying to reserve the gas tank for the last round. And the end of that third round was absolutely crazy. Reminiscent of the Max Holloway signature where he'd point down at the ground and start slugging. Not quite as hype as that, but both guys started swinging for the fences. It was phenomenal. Again, if you didn't watch this card, I highly recommend watching this fight. As is the case for most David Onama fights, it's his first win without a finish, which is saying a lot. Another fight I highly recommend watching back is the Nate Landwehr versus David Onama fight. That fight was another insane fight. He did lose that fight, but very entertaining, sloppy fight. But yeah, Onama ended up getting the unanimous decision. Both guys deserve that $50K bonus, so I hope Dana, if he doesn't give him the fight of the night, I hope he does hook him up with some money, because that was honestly my favorite fight on this card. Next up, we have Austin Lane versus Denise. This was Denise's debut. He was a world champion kickboxer, similar to Alex Pereira, just not as credentialed, didn't have that crazy rivalry, but very heavy hands, very good striker, obviously. Yeah, I wasn't familiar with Denise going into this, but I am now. I'm very much looking forward to this dude's scraps, especially in heavyweight where there's not much wrestlers. But Austin Lane, I thought he was going to win, just land on top, but he does not take a shot very well, especially from a guy as credentialed as Denise is. That was a nasty knockout as well. I hope they hooked him up with some money, especially considering they were giving out $300,000 bonuses on UFC 300. I hope they at least give him, a little bonus. But yeah, that knockout combination was nasty. He faked a right hand, landed a straight right, then his signature left hook, and Austin Lane fell right on his face. That was crazy. I highly recommend watching that. I saw ESPN post it and the UFC post it, so you guys probably have watched it already. Next up, we have Lipski or Da Silva. I call her Lipski just because she's fighting Karine Silva, so it's very confusing. But yeah, Lipski, she looked pretty decent, but Karine Da Silva is obviously the better fighter. Very solid wrestler, very solid top game, but neither of them wanted to get into boxing range. They were just throwing kicks if it wasn't on the ground, so really not that fun of a fight at all. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Karine Silva fight for the title, especially in WMMA where the competition is very top heavy. There's rumors going around that Lipski has fetal alcohol syndrome. I don't know if those are just jokes or if there's substance behind it, pun not intended, but comment below if you know the actual answer. And now for our co-main event, Ryan Spann versus Brogdon Gustav. Ryan Spann looked like he was going to go and get the win, but Brogdon Gustav is no joke. He's a beast. Anthony Smith Jr., the Russian Anthony Smith, as a lot of people have been calling him, because he looks honestly like Anthony Smith's doppelganger, which is crazy. And I think Ryan Spann thought he was fighting Anthony Smith the way he fouled him back-to-back times in that first round with those nut shots. It was rough to watch. But after the two fouls, Ryan Spann really didn't have much to show him. And Brogdon Gustav got the Brogdon Gustav got the knockout in the second round. Very nasty knockout. Ryan Spann was out pretty much cold. He was dazed and confused. Definitely wasn't recovering anytime soon, so wasn't quite as nasty as his next fight. Yeah, Brogdon Gustav is now in the top 15 in his third fight in the UFC, which is pretty crazy. He doesn't have many fights either, so he's definitely being tested early on into his career, which is a good thing. But yeah, very impressive performance from Gustav. Very much look forward to see what he can do in his career. Next up, we have the main event. Matheus Nicolau versus Alex Perez. This was a fun fight in that first round. They were going right at it pretty much out the gate. Alex Perez was throwing a lot of body shots in combination, which was pretty uncommon to see, at least in the UFC. Matheus Nicolau was landing hard shots. He showed very fast hands, but that chin is suspect, especially at flyweight. Alex Perez did a really good job at lowering Nicolau's guard, especially with those body shots. He was very worried about eating those all night, because that just drains your gas tank. If you've ever take a body shot before, I'd rather get hit in the face than the body, to be honest. Especially if they land in a good spot, it can really drain your gas tank quick. And yeah, he ended up getting that nasty knockout, Alex Perez, and very surprised to see Nicolau get folded like that, to be honest. Nicolau is a very solid fighter in his own right, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Alex Perez get a title fight within the next year or two, probably in the next year with this performance. Alex Perez is coming off 3 losses, which is not good, but got a very solid win tonight over Nicolau. who has a win over Cape, which is a very good win. And if Alex Perez doesn't get a title shot in his next fight, I would love to see Perez versus Manel Cat. That would be absolutely insane. But yeah, huge knockout. Pretty solid fight night, to be honest. Not the best fight night, but definitely went above and beyond with the performances and some of the knockouts. A lot of the WMMA fights were pretty lackluster, but I don't regret watching it, especially since it got done before 10 o'clock, which is always good. Yeah, if you guys watched the video this far, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And I hope you guys have a great week.